Hi, I'm Fred Chivers, and this is my 4299 EDN Critical Self-Reflection. My goal today is to describe some of my journey as an evolving educator to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, and I aim that by the end of this reflection I can share who I am as an educator, what I've learned through critical engagement with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander literature and representation so far in the course, and the kind of relationships that I wish to build with First Nations communities as an educator. So, my first artifact is a picture, or a few pictures, of my family. So, that's me. Not quite an educator yet, but we're getting there. And there is also my family. Now, obviously, I am a white male from a well-off family who is currently attending university. It goes without saying that I exist in a position of immense privilege, one I haven't always been fully aware of. In my research for this assignment, I read in a few instances of struggles faced by some people of Aboriginal heritage who struggle with their own culture due to the effects of societally constructed perceptions and the legacies of colonialist policies. And those readings really caused me to reflect a lot on my own family life, and it made me realize that I hadn't had the privilege of never needing to contend with questions about my own cultural heritage or identity. And I've never had to contend with negative representations of my own culture or even question my ownership of my culture in the way that a lot of these examples talked about. In short, I've never had to really have a cultural awareness. And this was also exacerbated by the relative lack of exposure I had to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pedagogies within my own schooling. As an educator, I want to be aware of the privileges that have allowed me to get to this position and the responsibility I have to support my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So therefore, I cannot take my own cultural background for granted. And as an educator, I believe this is a responsibility of mine that should extend to supporting all of my students by ensuring I incorporate non-Western modes of thought and pedagogy into my curriculum to promote this cultural awareness in a way that I missed out on, as well as to better support my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So, my second object, that is a picture of my dad. Very blurry, but there he is. So, a little bit about Dad. He's a lawyer, and like any good lawyer, he was always up for an argument or a debate as I was growing up. And I love these debates because Dad always pushed me to look at the bigger picture causes behind seemingly mundane parts of my life. I believe that he really helped me learn how to think critically about the scenarios I encounter. And in the readings, there are many examples of parts of our lives that have been shaped by these kind of bigger picture, invisible colonialist legacies. Specifically in education, our curriculum has been shaped to prioritize Western forms of knowledge and Western pedagogy, and historical policies of exclusion and assimilation still result in significant academic adversity for First Nations students today. It is critical that, as an educator, I'm able to identify the root causes of modern inequalities in education. I should be active in seeking ways to incorporate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander styles of knowledge and pedagogy into all of my lessons. A few examples of this, which I read about, is knowledge in being, as well as two ways curriculum, to give examples from reading. This is also in line with the APSTs. APST 1.4 states I should be incorporating strategies for teaching Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So, my third object is probably one that impacts me most personally of them, and it doesn't have a specific relation to First Nations students. But I hope that my thoughts on it can serve to demonstrate why I take listening to my students so I can support them to achieve at a high level with high expectations so seriously. So that is a bottle of my ADHD medication. Now, without over-explaining the point, I struggled a lot in school and still struggle today, but I was lucky enough to receive a lot of excellent support from educators who built positive relationships with me. Now, for a lot of teachers, it would have been very easy to see supporting me as just a box that needed to be ticked. But those teachers who did make an effort to listen to me and to my family about our educational needs helped me reach the point where I am today, with the privilege of seeking higher education with the aim to become a teacher myself. As I went through the readings, a lot of messages about being ignored or disagreed with in terms of someone's own experiences really resonated with me. So these are the lessons I hope to incorporate into my educational practice. It should be my responsibility to be active in fostering this positive and productive dialogue. Making sure my First Nations students are understood is my responsibility, especially when our society has erected structural barriers which have historically made it harder for those communities to engage in educational discourse. It is also critical that I take my First Nations students' lived experiences at their word, as I will never be able to understand their situation with the depth that they do. This is in line with the APST 2.4, which requires that I understand and respect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people to promote reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, not as an act of tokenism, but as a holistic incorporation of non-Western forms of education. So, on reflection, having completed this task, it has required me to critically assess my path towards becoming an educator and the privileges that are entailed in that path. By being exposed to literature and representations of First Australians, I've been able to develop a greater sense of cultural awareness, which I really hope to pass on to my students. It's also important that I always put aside my own experiences to fully take in First Nations people expressing their own experiences, as that's the only way I can ever adequately understand and support my First Nations students. I've also learned and read about many practical approaches in this course to incorporating First Nations modes of knowledge and pedagogies into my educational practice, as well as the reasoning why incorporating these elements is so important to supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and communities to achieve to the high levels that I know they can. That was my 4299 EDN critical reflection. I hope you really enjoyed. Thank you.